Welcome to a century of cinema. Today I will be exploring my favourite films of 1936. First is Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. This is Chaplin's first film in 5 years, and while still predominantly silent, it does contain some dialogue. The film is largely concerned with, as the title says, what were modern times in 1936. The talkies had been in existence for almost a decade, and it's no great leap to assume that Chaplin would have been feeling somewhat obsolete at this point in time, considering all his incredible success was as a silent film star. He would have known that his little tramp character, the persona that the world recognised and loved, was becoming a relic of a bygone era. However, the film itself does not specifically touch on how the modern world affects Chaplin himself. It focuses on how it affects regular everyday people, seen through the eyes of the tramp, and those of Ellen, credited only as a gamin, played by Paulette Goddard, who was in a relationship with Chaplin at the time. The basic story involves the tramp struggling to function in a modern world, being at the mercy of various machines and being repeatedly sent to jail, even preferring it to the outside world at some point. He soon meets Ellen, who is essentially a street kid and on the run for basically just trying to feed herself. The two help each other navigate the problems they face and dream of a better life together. They never quite reach it, but the message is to keep trying. Chaplin was intent that his tramp character would not speak. However, he did sing, but the song he performs is in a vaguely French-sounding gibberish. There is actual dialogue in the film, but it mostly emanates from some kind of technology, such as a radio or a record player, or a video screen. That one would be considered science fiction in 1936. Like most Chaplin films, he effortlessly blends brilliant physical comedy with razor-sharp satire and heartbreaking pathos. However, I feel there's an added poignancy to Modern Times because it foreshadows the end of the tramp character. I sometimes think you can read all of that in Chaplin's face at times. He was a better actor than he often gets credit for. Paulette Goddard is a striking and invigorating leading lady for him too. This was her first major role, but certainly not her last. Another standout of the film is Chaplin's score, which would later comprise the melody of the song Smile, whose lyrics were inspired by the script of Modern Times. Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. The Petrified Forest, based on a play by Robert E. Sherwood, stars Leslie Howard as Alan, a penniless drifter who arrives at an isolated gas station where he meets Gabrielle, the daughter of the owner, played by Bette Davis. Gabrielle, who dreams of getting out and going to Paris and painting, is awestruck by the worldly and intellectual Alan, much to the dismay of an uncomplicated young man named Bose, who has designs on Gabrielle. Alan is also quite taken with her and encourages her dreams of escape, but his confidence and lust for life seem to have evaporated a long time ago, and he doesn't want to take Gabrielle down with him. Instead, after accepting a free meal, he takes the opportunity for a ride away from there. The couple who take him are then carjacked by a fugitive and killer named Duke Mantee, Humphrey Bogart's breakout role. Surmising that Mantee and his gang would be heading toward the gas station, Alan begins walking back. When he arrives, Duke has already taken control of the gas station to wait for his girl to arrive. Alan strangely seems to revel in this new development, feeling more alive than he has in years. Yet when Bose is shot trying to fight back, Gabrielle takes him out back to dress his wound, and Alan asks Duke to kill him before he leaves. He signs over an insurance policy to Gabrielle, so when he dies, Gabrielle will be able to have the life she wants. Duke agrees to kill him and not tell Gabrielle the plan. You can clearly see the stage origins of the Petrified Forest in the film version, since there is not a lot of film-specific artistry at work here. The strengths lie largely in the source material and the performances. And Howard and Bogart are actually reprising their Broadway roles. The studio wanted Edward G. Robinson, a bigger star at the time, to play Duke Mantee, but Leslie Howard insisted on Bogart getting the role. which paid off big for Bogart, since this was the performance that began his rise to stardom and icon status. As for Leslie Howard, I've never been a huge fan of his. I always found him kind of insipid, but this is one of his better roles. And then, of course, you have the great Bette Davis, who unfortunately doesn't get a lot to do here. However, she is always whatever the role calls for, and this is no exception. She's very sweet and innocent in The Petrified Forest, and it's not a side we get to see from Betty very often. I suggest watching this in between Of Human Bondage and Dangerous as a kind of Betty buffer. But of course, when it comes to The Petrified Forest, you're really there for Bogart.
Oh, let that mug make a mug out of me, but don't anybody try it again. Just keep in mind that I and the boys is candidates for hanging. And the first time any one of you makes a wrong move, I'm going to kill the whole lot of you. But keep your seats.
Alfred Hitchcock's Sabotage is based on Joseph Conrad's novel The Secret Agent. Interestingly, in the very same year, Hitchcock directed a film called Secret Agent, based on different source material. And a few years later, he directed a film called Saboteur, which is also a completely different story. What does all this mean? Nothing. It's probably just weird coincidence. Sabotage is about Mrs. Verloc, Sylvia Sidney in a riveting performance, whose husband commits an act of sabotage as part of a terrorist plot. This is where the film begins. Scotland Yard suspect Verloc and place Ted Spencer undercover at the greengrocer next to the cinema owned by Verloc. He proceeds to get close to Mrs. Verloc, at first to gain greater access, but he soon develops feelings for her, which would seem to be reciprocated. The majority of the film centers on Sylvia Sidney's character, her relationship with her little brother, her growing suspicion of her husband, and her burgeoning attraction to Ted. And what is so interesting is how much Sylvia Sidney conveys not with her words, but just with her expressions. In fact, throughout the film, she does not give away much of how she feels in her dialogue, at least not until the very end, when everything begins to overwhelm her. She is the emotional nexus of Sabotage. Events unfold around her, completely beyond her control, but she is the reason we care about it. Naturally, this is a Hitchcock film, so the suspense builds brilliantly. Some scenes could even be considered among his best work, particularly the sequence where Mrs. Verloc's brother is carrying a ticking bomb through London, and constantly getting delayed as the timer mercilessly continues to count down. I would not be surprised if that sequence will require viewing in every film school in the world. Students, this is how you do suspense. However, for me, the real highlight of Sabotage is Sylvia Sidney. She 100% nails this role. So she is my choice for Best Actress of 1936. My final selection is Frank Capra's Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. Gary Cooper shines as Longfellow Deeds, an uncomplicated, unassuming, regular, yet oddball schmo from a quaint little town called Mandrake Falls. He inherits a huge fortune from his millionaire uncle and travels to the city to claim his fortune. Naturally, the vultures are already circling, seeking to take advantage of the apparent naivete of Deeds. A lawyer wants Deeds to retain him and let him manage the fortune. Another nephew wants to sue to claim the inheritance, and the press want to use him as a headline. This is where Babe Bennett, played by Jean Arthur, comes in. She's an ambitious journalist who comes up with an idea to get close to Deeds by playing a damsel in distress. She calls herself Mary and proceeds to write stories about the supposedly odd behavior of Deeds. She dubs him the Cinderella Man, which, much to Deeds' annoyance, catches on quickly. Meanwhile, the people in Deeds' orbit either come to respect and care for him, or realize that he is not some dumb hick. He has an extraordinary bullshit detector, and even when he doesn't quite understand everything these big city types are going on about, he knows when someone's trying to manipulate him. His only blind spot is Mary/Babe, and that is due to his feelings for her, and the fact that Babe's affection for him is also actually genuine. After he finds out about her betrayal, he is broken, but finds a purpose when he realizes that he can use his substantial fortune to help out struggling farmers. The unscrupulous lawyer Cedar takes it upon himself to petition the court to certify Deeds as insane and therefore incompetent to have control of such a fortune. At this point, Deeds just shuts down. He doesn't even attempt to defend himself until Babe and other allies speak up for him and plead with him to stand up for himself. When he does, he makes it very clear to everyone what the truth is.
See all those fellows? They're the ones I'm trying to help. They need it. Mr. Cedar and that Mr. Semple don't need anything. They've got plenty. It's like I'm out in a big boat and I see one fellow in a rowboat who's tired of rowing and wants a free ride, and another fellow who's drowning. Who would you expect me to rescue? Mr. Cedar, who's just tired of rowing and wants a free ride, or those men out there who are drowning? Any 10-year-old child will give you the answer to that.
Mr. Deeds Goes to Town is one of Frank Capra's best and most Capra-esque movies. When we think of Frank Capra, we usually think of the little guy standing up to corruption and opportunism with little more than common sense and common decency. And that's what this story is. And it never at any point puts a foot wrong. There is not a wasted scene in the whole movie. The script by Robert Riskin, based on Charles Buddington Kellen's short story Opera Hat, is nothing short of exceptional. It is witty, warm, and incredibly airtight. Add to that Capra's razor-sharp yet fluid direction, and Gary Cooper's stellar, incredibly lovable, and at times heart-wrenching performance, and you get a fantastic movie that manages to hold up pretty damn well 85 years later. Oh, by the way, Jean Arthur is pretty awesome in this too. She was very close to overtaking Sylvia Sidney for my Best Actress choice. However, Mr. Deeds does pick up the rest of my top picks. Best Screenplay for Robert Riskin, Best Actor for Gary Cooper, Best Director for Frank Capra, and Best Picture of 1936. Join me next time on A Century of Cinema, when I will be discussing my favourite films of 1937. Now go watch a movie.